Rosie the Riveter, World War II Homefront Wall of Honor. Launched in 2002, celebration for the rise of Rosie the Riveter Day. This installation serves as a commemorate the history of World War II homefront workers and, quote, Rosie the Riveters, unquote. Their commitment to work together in a common good helped bring victory to the United States and its allies. This Wall of Honor will continue to grow as photos and biographies are collected from families of World War II homefront workers and will be exhibited in various locations throughout the SF Bay Area and beyond. We would like to thank New West Company for generously donating this portion of the Richmond Bay Trail for this inaugural exhibit. People from all backgrounds through Dorothy Petroni. There's actually, I had to find it, I hope she's here. One of the ladies, she's just retired from the Rosie the Riveter display, the National Park Service, this building here. And she's going to talk about, she brought her children out to Danville? Walnut Creek, out to Walnut Creek and the segregation and racism she experienced. 50 years she's been holding it in. She's finally putting out a book. She's in her 80s, I want to say. Dorothy Petroni, Dorothy Dottie, graduated from high school in Grand Island, Nebraska, 1942. She intended to go to college. Friends told her she was needed in the local bomb factory. She asked her father for his advice. He reminded her that he had 2 brothers in the war. For the remaining 3 years of the war, she taped bombs after they were stuffed in caps so the caps wouldn't come off prematurely. She ran the counter at the Montgomery Ward store. Betty Mosher Sampson, aircraft engine mechanic, 43 to 45, McClellan Air Force Base, Sacramento. Betty, so there's young Betty. There's older Betty. The Craneway Pavilion. I gotta do the same thing. Oh, same thing for her. Sorry. Louise Witch, metalworker. She attended Pasadena City College. Summer began working in Douglas Aircraft, where she prepared airplane wings for riveters. As a sheet of metal was slid into a wing, she pounded the metal to fit the wing's shape. Riveters were next. Louise says there was a strong sense of patriotism as people from diverse cultures and backgrounds joined together to make their country stronger. She returned to college at UC Berkeley in 45. Betty Dorman Angelo, secretary, Douglas Aircraft Company, Long Beach. One of Betty's most vivid memories from working on the home front is having to turn her headlights off while driving to and from her shift to minimize light during blackouts. Betty D'Angelo, there's her ID. Okay, I'm skimming across. There's Agnes Moore, journeyman welder. She's got a race car. Agnes would drop her daughter off at around-the-clock childcare development center. There, her daughter would sleep all night, wake up in the morning, be fed, dressed before sent off to preschool. People think it's amazing the job we did, and we don't think it as anything. We just think everyone would have done it, and they would have. Marianne Sosa came from Oregon to Richmond to care for her sister's son. She was hired in Kaisman Shipyard No. 3 to make adjustments on ships' blueprints. Wartime work in Richmond became a family endeavor as the 2 sisters and mother also worked there. I specifically didn't do anything great, but I participated in something that was great. Hazel Bennett, international harvester, Indianapolis. Fiercely loving, patriotic, independent woman. Hazel continued to work at home. She finally remembered giving her 3 living children. A true inspiration of Rosie the Riveter. Eleanor Fisher, Wright's Airplane Factory in Paterson, New Jersey. Worked as parts assembler on aircraft engines and propellers while her husband, Walter Kaczynski Fisher, USMC, served overseas in World War II. Ever the optimist, she told Walter the other soldiers going off to war, "Bye for now." After the war, Walter returned home safely to New Jersey. They moved to Florida in 1955, then on to Colorado in 74. She remained in Colorado until she passed in 2015, the age of 92. Evelina Gonzalez Duran, burner. In 1942, at the age of 16, Evelyn pretended to be 18 to enlist in the Army. Shortly after, her true age was found out, and she was sent home to Phoenix, Arizona. She resided there until her brother Frank called her to tell her family about the opportunity to work at Richmond shipyards to build ships. She worked in shipyard number 1 as a welder, burner, constructing Liberty and Victory ships. Her contribution to America's war effort was a badge of honor she proudly wore through her life. Phyllis Gould, journeyman welder, Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond. Phyllis was living in Richmond when she and her husband heard the radio broadcast announcing the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Her husband declared he wanted to learn welding, and Phyllis said, "Me too." Formally rejected by the union because she was a woman, Phyllis was one of the first women to be hired by Kaiser's Richmond shipyards building deck houses in prefab. Her husband's mindset that men bring home the bacon couldn't hold this Rosie down. Ludi Mitchell, journeyman welder, Kaiser Shipyards. In 1942, Ludi married Jess B. Mitchell of Houston, and the couple traveled to California to work in the Richmond's Kaiser Shipyards until the war ended in 1945. In April 1950, Ludi gave birth to one of 5 children, Jesse Jr., Dietrich, Robin, and Garth. In 1956, the family purchased a home in Richmond where Jesse and Ludi reared their family and lived out their lives. Ludi passed away in October 2001, shortly after traveling to Washington, D.C. to testify before a congressional subcommittee to advocate for the establishment of a national park to commemorate contribution to the war effort. Margaret Archie, overhead welder. After being encouraged by her husband to get a job in the shipyard, Margaret went to welding school and then to be an assembly line welding sheets of steel for a year before she became pregnant with a 3rd child. Her mother-in-law, sister-in-law also worked in the shipyards as laborers. Priscilla Elder, electrician with her husband off to war and a young son to care for. Priscilla and her twin sister joined their older sister working at the Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond. All 3 sisters worked as electricians. Priscilla wired circuit boxes installed on troop transports in Shipyard 3 and also managed the tool bin. Don't mess with her tools. Robert Hines. This Berkeley, California native expertise in shipbuilding was deemed so essential to wartime production that he was asked to work on the home front. Bob first helped build the launching ways at Moore Shipyard in Oakland and later built boats for the Army Transport Service, ATS, at Hunts Marine, Richmond. In 1943, he officially joined the ATS, first as a tugboat captain and later a fireboat captain. Rosa Mazzola Monaco, Riveter. While her fiancé was stationed in Germany with the Army, Rosa filled the gaps with men left behind in the plants. She was riveting airplanes during employment at Briggs Manufacturing Plant in Detroit. Mary Peace Head. Mary left Louisiana to follow her sweetheart stationed in the Bay Area in the U.S. Navy. After marrying, she got training and a job as a welder at the Kaiser Shipyards. She fulfilled several more roles during her time there, filling in when others weren't there for their shifts and administrative roles. There's hills in the background, sorry, that's a beautiful time to be filming and stuff. Gee, happy. Marion Wynn, Kaiser Shipyard, Richmond. After graduating from high school in Minnesota, Marion traveled to Richmond to join her father, who worked as an electrician leadman for the Kaiser Shipyards. Marion got a job as a pipe welder and worked for the West Storage area where pipes were brought for her to weld. Don't say you can't do something until you try it, until you do it first. Catherine K. Morrison. Kay and her husband left Chico, which is just north of here by 3 hours, to find wartime work in the Bay Area. They found housing in San Francisco, which meant a ferry boat ride for their graveyard shift to Richmond. They worked together in Shipyard 2, where Kay was a journeyman welder and her husband worked as a shipwright. It just felt like we had a mission to work and bring our boys home. The history came later. Mary Torres from Oakland. Wanting to do something for her country, Mary saved up money from her summertime job, packed a bag, left a note for her parents, purchased a one-way bus ticket to Califas from her home in Pennsylvania. After a stint in McLaren Air Force Base, she became a journeyman welder at Moore's Shipyard in Oakland. She married her boss, and together they were there for 62 years. This country is the best country in the world, and I would once more sign up and I could start building ships again if they want me. May Cryer. During World War II, May Cryer heard the call of duty at the age of 17. Working for Boeing in Seattle, when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, May once again showed that we can do it spirit is still going strong. Sewing masks with iconic red, white, and polka dot fabric, she received more than 5,000 requests and garnered attention from ABC, NPR, and the Washington Post, CNN, and many other news outlets. Most recently, the Rosie the Riveter Congressional Gold Medal Act was signed into law, a mission that May has pursued for 40 years. They say it couldn't be done, but we did it. Gladys Holstrom. Gladys Fern Holstrom Keeter was a Rosie and inspiration to generations to come. She grew up in Iowa on a farm, worked the munitions plant in Iowa making munitions for the war, then came to Richmond in '43. Gladys began working as a welder in the Kaiser shipyards in Richmond helping build Liberty ships. It was this shipyard she met Clyde Keeter, who was also a welder. They married in '45. 3 generations participated in Rosie gatherings in Richmond to honor Gladys. I worked as a welder because it was a job that needed to be done. Connie Rangel Gomez. Connie worked in Shipyard 1 in Richmond during World War II as a welder, launching 1 Liberty ship a week alongside her father Alfred and brother Ernest, both riggers, as well as sisters Elisa and Rangel Jamie and Angelina Rangel Shipe. These 5 shipyard working Rangels commuted by car to the Richmond shipyards, leaving home early every morning about 6:30 a.m. They all dispersed to their designated job sites. They worked from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. with a half-an-hour lunch at 11:30, where the family would gather and eat together. John Hallett, Superintendent Shipyard Manager. John Hallett was a leading engineer with Kaiser in 1940. The need for many transport ships to be built quickly was apparent as current shipbuilding methods could not meet these standards. Under Henry Kaiser's orders, John and his staff went to 4 Detroit plants and after 6 months developed a plan for prefabricating and obtaining parts which could be used in the new Kaiser Liberty ship program. John went on to manage one of the Kaiser Liberty shipyards in Vancouver, Washington. USS Corregidor was launched in '43 and was christened Mrs. John Alice Meyer Hallett. Hazel Marie Perrin. Hazel Perrin left Midwest in '42 with her 6-month-old firstborn son in her arms to join the war effort. She arrived at Swan Island shipyards in Portland, became a welder and riveter until the war ended in '45. Hazel then met up with her husband Gerald, who was just getting out of the Army after 4 years of service, moved back to the Midwest, raised a family of 5 children. July 7, 2001, they celebrated their 60th anniversary before Gerald's passing a few months later. Dorotha Workman Miller, Hudson Motor Car Company. When Dorotha heard about job opportunities for women during the war, she moved to Detroit, Michigan to work at the Hudson Motor Car Company. The factory was now making fighter planes for the war, and she got a job riveting the wings. She worked the evening shift, and after work, a group of friends would go to the Belle Isle Park and ice skate on the pond until daylight. After the war, she moved back to her home of Huntington, West Virginia, where she got married and raised her family. Eve Derber Dolgan, social representative, Springfield, Massachusetts. A daughter of immigrants from Kiev, and a first-generation college graduate, Eve Dolgan served as a special representative of the Civil Service Commission. She publicized employment for federal positions, recruited jobs from Pearl Harbor and the Panama Canal to Bradley Airfield, Connecticut, VA Hospital in Leeds, Massachusetts, Westover Air Force Base, Chicopee Women's Aircraft Maintenance Squad, WAMS, and the Springfield, Massachusetts Armory. She recruited candidates from all backgrounds and abilities, including disabled veterans. She also served as a spokesperson for a radio program series entitled Here's Your War Job. Ida Rayo Tagliaferri, Consolidated Vultee Aircraft. Born in 1925, the second of 8, Ida grew up in the Depression era. The New Deal provided training opportunities for which led her job at Grananetti Cutlery Company. When the war broke out, Ida found herself making machine gun parts instead of knives. She married in '43. That took her to San Diego, where she worked at Consolidated Vultee Aircraft Company, later known as Convair, where she operated a lathe machine and fashioned custom parts for planes from blueprints. Ida was the only woman in the shop and probably the youngest operator at the age of 18. Anne Sens Mock, Goodyear Aircraft. Anne Catherine Sands Mock worked at the Goodyear Aircraft in Akron. She was a riveter and a B-29 aircraft skin. Her brother John was a blister gunner on a B-29, so it made her work even more fulfilling. She met her future husband Woodrow through his mother, who also worked at the Goodyear Aircraft. They exchanged letters as he was in the Navy on the USS Hancock. When he returned home after the war, they began dating and married in July of '46. She was very proud of her home front contributions to the war effort. Zori Sismiel. After graduating from Hibbing High School in Minnesota, Zori traveled to Windsor, Ontario to help her older sister care for a newborn. On her way home, she witnessed long lines of people outside Detroit's auto plant seeking to join the war effort. Her bold decision to get in line led to a job riveting wing sections for Navy dive bomber aircraft. Her dedication earned her a title as the Hudson Motorcraft plant after the war. She met her future husband, Robert Lux, a returning Pacific War veteran. They were happily married for 52 years. Dorothy Friggle Rankin. At the age of 20, Dorothy Friggle started working at the Douglas Aircraft Company in '43 as a riveter. She also worked as a bucker and eventually moved into silk screening for aircraft displays. She spent most of her career doing silk screening, which she loved. Dorothy worked for approximately 4 years at Douglas and continued working in avionics at Spartan and Burtech. Dorothy continued working on the aircraft industry until her retirement in '92, though she thoroughly enjoyed it and was very proud of her work. Elizabeth Fisher, Bremerton, Washington. Elizabeth Fisher was born in Plaquemines Parish, raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. At age 18, with her father's blessing, she responded to the National Youth Administration newspaper ad focused on providing education and work for youth. After completing training, Elizabeth left New Orleans in 1941 and boarded a train headed to Puget Sound Naval Training in Bremerton with more extensive training as a machinist during World War II. She learned to read blueprints, operate a lathe machine. Elizabeth believed she performed her duties as close to perfect so she could ensure that her boys would come home safely. Dale Lackey, shop fitter. In 1942, Dale Lackey, a plasterer by trade, reported for work at Richmond shipyards. He arrived from Nebraska with his wife and 3 children just 4 days earlier. He started a laborer, but soon became a ship fitter, which paid 80 cents an hour. Dale stayed at that shipyard until '45 and worked on old bulkheads, flying bridges, and portholes. In off hours, he was an air raid warden, and Dale and Marie built their home. Marie did their part doing childcare for mothers in shipyards. I made nearly $50 a week. Glad I came to California. I was here before, and I think over by the park, this whole trail goes all the way down towards Oakland, right? There is a lot more. I was up about 2 miles up this way, and I got to see from the freeway there's a picture of a black child holding the Rosie the Riveter, We Can Do It, or the Rosie the Riveter thing with a black mama. It was beautiful. And it talked about the Red Oak Liberty ship. I got a picture on it, I'll post it. I'm gonna try and learn to edit so I can put all this stuff on together. So, show you one quick view of where I'm at. It's funny because this is Richmond. San Francisco's this way. See little itty bitty tiny little things over there? That's the city. Transamerica. A little bit closer. That's Fisherman's Wharf with the Ferris wheel. There's Twin Peaks. Oh, and then I'm gonna have to quit in just a minute. And then we get Bay Bridge. So, this is Scott with AffectiveDog.com, your nomadic dog trainer. This, I think, is Coast Miwok land. But it's also the Rosie the Riveter Legacy Museum. The home front legacy. The war shed light on America's promise. It created an explosion, accelerated all the way to the 1960s. I gotta go. I would read that, but I really gotta go to the bathroom. So, enjoy the view. Give it a few more minutes and I gotta run to my car. And over there, is Oakland. Alameda. Alemeda's on the other side of Oakland. So, have a great night.